Captain Sarah Martinez stared at the empty playground through the reinforced glass of New Terra Colony's main dome. The swings moved gently in the artificial breeze, but no children's laughter echoed through the corridors today. 3 days had passed since the Zephyrian raiders struck, and 27 human children between the ages of 5 and 12 were gone. The colony's emergency council had gathered in the main hall, their faces etched with worry and rage. Sarah's hands clenched into fists as she reviewed the security footage for the 100th time. The Zephyrians had moved with military precision, their serpentine forms gliding through the settlement's defenses like smoke through a screen door. They hadn't come for resources, technology, or territory. They had come specifically for the children. "Captain, we've received a transmission from the Galactic Trade Union," announced Communications Officer Chen, his voice trembling slightly. "The Zephyrian High Command claims our children were taken as biological specimens for their research programs. They're demanding we cease all expansion into the Kepler system in exchange for negotiations." Sarah's jaw tightened. The Zephyrians were one of the newer species in the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 years ago. They were known for their cold, calculating nature and their belief that might made right. What they didn't know was that they had just awakened something far more dangerous than any weapon in their arsenal. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the colony's chief medical officer and mother of 2 of the missing children, stepped forward. Her usually calm demeanor had been replaced by something Sarah had never seen before. A mother's fury barely contained beneath a veneer of professional composure. "They took Tommy and Maria," she said, her voice steady but her eyes burning. "My babies are somewhere out there, probably scared and confused. These Zephyrians think they understand humans because they've read our files and studied our biology. They have no idea what they've done." The room fell silent except for the hum of the life support systems. Sarah looked around at the faces of the colonists, farmers, engineers, teachers, doctors, and former soldiers who had come to this distant world to build something better for their families. Now their children were gone, taken by creatures who saw them as nothing more than laboratory specimens. "The Zephyrians made one critical error in their assessment of humanity," Sarah said, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "They studied our biology, our technology, our social structures, but they never bothered to understand what happens when you threaten our young." She activated the main display, showing star charts of the local systems. "The Union wants us to wait for diplomatic negotiations. They want us to trust that a species that steals children will honor any agreement they make. They want us to be reasonable." Sarah's voice grew harder with each word. "But there's nothing reasonable about taking our children." Marcus Webb, the colony's chief security officer and a veteran of the Proxima conflict, stood up from his chair. His weathered face bore scars from battles fought in humanity's early days of space exploration. "Captain, I've been tracking their ship signatures. The raiding party that hit us was just a small task force. Their main fleet is stationed 3 systems away in the Zirion belt. But here's the interesting part, they're not expecting any retaliation." Sarah nodded grimly. The Zephyrians had clearly studied human diplomatic responses to previous conflicts. They had seen humanity negotiate, compromise, and seek peaceful solutions even when wronged. What they hadn't seen was what happened when someone took human children. That was a line that had never been crossed before, at least not by an organized military force. "Dr. Vasquez, what do we know about Zephyrian physiology?" Sarah asked, though she already suspected the answer would be useful. "They're cold-blooded, reptilian in nature. Their reaction times are slower than ours, especially in cooler temperatures. They're strong but not particularly fast. Most importantly, they have no concept of the parent-child bond as we know it. In their society, young are raised communally and considered property of the state until they reach maturity. Which explains why they thought taking our children would be just another negotiating tactic," Marcus added with disgust. Sarah walked to the communications console and opened a channel to Earth Command. "This is Captain Martinez of New Terra Colony, requesting immediate priority contact with Admiral Richardson." Within minutes, the grizzled face of Admiral James Richardson appeared on the screen. Behind him, Sarah could see the bustling activity of Earth's Strategic Command Center. "Sarah, I've been following your situation. The Diplomatic Corps is already working on opening negotiations with the Zephyrian High Command. With respect, Admiral, diplomacy isn't going to bring our children home. These beings don't understand negotiation. They understand force. They've made the mistake of thinking we're weak because we prefer peace. Richardson's expression darkened. What are you proposing, Captain? I'm requesting permission to activate Protocol 7. The silence that followed was deafening. Protocol 7 hadn't been used since the early colonial wars, and for good reason. It authorized colonial forces to take any action necessary to protect human civilians, up to and including the complete elimination of hostile forces. It was humanity's nuclear option, reserved for threats to human survival. Sarah, you know what you're asking. Protocol 7 means no prisoners, no mercy, no quarter given. The galactic community will see it as an act of barbarism. They took our children, Admiral. 27 innocent kids who were playing in a schoolyard 3 days ago. The galactic community can judge us all they want after we bring our babies home. Richardson was quiet for a long moment, and Sarah could see him weighing the political ramifications against the moral imperative. Finally, he spoke. The authorization code is Sierra 7 Alpha 9. Sarah, I want those children back, but remember, the galaxy is watching. Show them why humanity has earned its place among the stars, but also show them why we should never be crossed. As the transmission ended, Sarah turned to face her colonists. The room was filled with parents, grandparents, and people who had dedicated their lives to nurturing the next generation of humanity. Now they would show the galaxy what happened when that next generation was threatened. The transformation of New Terra Colony began within hours of Admiral Richardson's authorization. Dr. Vasquez had temporarily stepped away from her medical duties to help coordinate the rescue operation. Her scientific mind now focused entirely on analyzing Zephyrian weaknesses. Marcus Webb was converting the colony's mining equipment into weapons of war, while Sarah worked with the colony's engineers to prepare their small fleet of ships for combat. In the engineering bay, Thomas Chen was making modifications to their mining, drones that would have impressed military contractors back on Earth. The heavy industrial equipment that had been used to carve homes and farms from an alien world was being repurposed into instruments of righteous fury. Plasma cutters became directed energy weapons. Mining charges became armor-piercing explosives, and cargo haulers became assault craft. The Zephyrians have been monitoring our communications, Sarah announced to her senior staff. They expect us to follow standard diplomatic protocols, send envoys, negotiate through intermediaries, maybe impose some trade sanctions. They're so confident in their assessment of human behavior that they haven't even reinforced their position. Dr. Vasquez looked up from her analysis of captured Zephyrian technology from their previous raids on other colonies. I've been studying their equipment and ship designs. Everything is built for efficiency and intimidation, but not for sustained combat. They rely on quick strikes and psychological warfare. They've never faced an enemy that would pursue them once they retreat. Marcus nodded as he checked the targeting systems on their improvised weapons. In all their previous raids on human colonies, we've responded with investigations, legal proceedings, and ultimately negotiations. They see us as predictable, even weak. They have no idea that taking our children just changed every rule they thought they knew. The colony's main hangar had been converted into a war room where every available adult was either preparing equipment or analyzing intelligence. Parents who had spent their days teaching children were now learning to use military-grade weapons. Farmers were studying space combat tactics. Scientists were developing new ways to track Zephyrian ships through hyperspace. Sarah received an encrypted message from Captain Liu. Way of the merchant vessel Prosperity's Dream, one of the few human ships in the nearby systems. Captain Martinez, we intercepted Zephyrian communications. They're treating this like a routine operation. They've got our kids in holding facilities on their research ship, and they're planning to move them to their home system within the week. But here's the thing, they're not expecting any pursuit. The intelligence was both encouraging and terrifying. The children were alive and being held on a single research vessel. But if the Zephyrians succeeded in taking them to their home system, rescue would become nearly impossible. Sarah had to act fast, but she also had to be smart. Dr. Vasquez, what's the psychological profile of Zephyrian researchers? Sarah asked. They're methodical, cautious, and they view other species as inferior. They would see human children as particularly interesting specimens because of our rapid development and problem-solving abilities. They'll want to study them extensively before doing anything irreversible. Sarah nodded grimly. The Zephyrians' scientific curiosity might be the only thing keeping the children safe for now. How long do we have? Based on their previous research protocols, they'll spend at least 2 weeks on initial observations and non-invasive testing. They'll want to establish baseline data before proceeding to more aggressive research methods. The room fell silent, as everyone understood the implications. The children were safe for now, but they were living on borrowed time. Every day that passed brought them closer to becoming subjects in experiments that their human minds couldn't comprehend. Marcus finished his weapons check and turned to Sarah. "Captain, I've been thinking about their tactical approach. The Zephyrians have been successful because they hit isolated targets and retreat before any significant response can be organized. They're not prepared for immediate retaliation. What are you suggesting? We don't wait for backup from Earth. We don't try to assemble a fleet. We hit them now while they think they're safe. Our mining ships might not look like much, but they're tough, fast, and equipped with industrial equipment that can cut through anything." Dr. Vasquez pulled up holographic displays of Zephyrian ship designs. Their hulls are designed to deflect energy weapons, but they're not built to withstand the kind of focused plasma-cutting tools we use for asteroid mining. If we can get close enough, we can literally cut their ships apart. Sarah studied the tactical projections. It was a desperate plan that relied on surprise, speed, and the Zephyrians' complete misunderstanding of human nature. But it was also their best chance of getting the children back alive. "There's something else," Dr. Vasquez continued. "I've been analyzing the cultural data we have on the Zephyrians. They have a rigid hierarchy based on individual strength and cunning. Leaders maintain their positions through displays of power and successful raids. But there's no precedent in their society for dealing with what we're about to do. Meaning when we hit them hard, and rescue our children, it's going to shatter their understanding of how humans respond to threats. They've been operating under the assumption that we're a peaceful species that can be intimidated. When they realize they're wrong, it's going to change everything." Sarah looked around at her team. Parents who had become warriors, civilians who had become soldiers, all united by a single purpose. The galaxy had never seen humans fight for their children before. The Zephyrians were about to learn why that was a line that should never have been crossed. "Marcus, how long until our ships are ready?" 6 hours for basic combat modifications, 12 for full optimization. "Dr. Vasquez, how long until you can develop countermeasures for their technology?" "I already have preliminary solutions. Give me 4 more hours for testing." Sarah activated the colony's communication system. "All residents of New Terra Colony, this is Captain Martinez. In 18 hours, we're going to bring our children home. The galaxy is about to learn what happens when you threaten the future of humanity." The improvised human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zirion belt, like avenging angels emerging from the void. 5 mining vessels, 2 cargo haulers, and 1 heavily modified transport ship faced off against a Zephyrian research flotilla that had never expected to see combat in what they considered safe space. Captain Sarah Martinez stood on the bridge of the lead ship. "Terra's vengeance," watching as her sensors revealed the location of the Zephyrian research vessel holding the children. "Contact established with the Zephyrian command ship," announced communications officer Chen. "They're demanding to know why we've entered their operational area." Sarah's expression was stone cold as she opened the communication channel. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the serpentine features of Zephyrian Fleet Commander Sithkar. His yellow eyes regarded the human ships with what appeared to be amusement rather than concern. "Human vessel, you are in violation of established patrol boundaries. Return to your colonial space immediately or face the consequences," the alien commander hissed through the translator. "Commander Sithkar, this is Captain Sarah Martinez of the Terran Colonial Fleet. You are holding 27 human children taken from New Terra Colony. Release them immediately." The Zephyrian's throat sac inflated in what their species used as laughter. "The specimens are valuable research subjects. Your species has proven most interesting to our scientists. The young ones show remarkable adaptability and problem-solving capabilities." Sarah felt her blood turn to ice. The casual way the alien referred to children as specimens confirmed her worst fears about what the Zephyrians intended. "Those are not specimens. They are children. They have families who love them. Release them now and we might let you live." "Your threats are as empty as your reputation for military prowess," Sithkar replied. "Human colonies always submit to superior force. You will withdraw your vessels and await diplomatic negotiations, or we will add your crews to our research population." The channel closed, leaving Sarah staring at a blank screen. Around her, the bridge crew waited for orders, their faces reflecting the same cold determination that had driven them across 3 star systems to reach this moment. "Dr. Vasquez, are you ready with the countermeasures?" Sarah asked. "Standing by, Captain. Their communication protocols are more sophisticated than we expected, but I've managed to identify their command frequencies. If we can disrupt their coordination, they'll be fighting as individual ships instead of a fleet." Marcus Webb's voice crackled through the intercom from the gunnery control station. "All weapons are online. The plasma cutting array is charged and ready. Captain, these mining tools were designed to cut through asteroid cores. Zephyrian armor won't even slow them down." Sarah opened a channel to the entire human fleet. "All ships, this is Terra's vengeance. We came here for one purpose, to bring our children home. The Zephyrians think they understand humans because they've studied our diplomatic responses and trade agreements. They think we're weak because we prefer negotiation to violence. They're about to learn that they've confused mercy with weakness." On the screen, she could see the Zephyrian ships beginning to move into defensive positions. There were 12 vessels in total, including the research ship that held the children. The Zephyrians had superior numbers and technology, but they had never faced humans fighting for their young. "Today we show the galaxy what humanity really is," Sarah continued. "We're not just explorers or traders or scientists. We're parents. We're teachers. We're people who would cross the universe to protect a single child's smile. The Zephyrians wanted to study human nature. Let's give them a lesson they'll never forget." The human ships spread out in an attack formation that seemed almost primitive compared to the elegant Zephyrian fleet movements. But Sarah's strategy wasn't based on sophisticated military tactics. It was based on something much more dangerous: the desperation of parents who would stop at nothing to save their children. "Dr. Vasquez, initiate communication disruption," Sarah ordered. The effect was immediate. The coordinated Zephyrian formation began to waver as ships lost contact with their command vessel. Individual captains started making their own decisions, breaking the unity that had made their fleet dangerous. "All ships, commence attack," Sarah commanded. The mining ship New Hope's Fury was the first to engage, its plasma cutting array slicing through the hull of a Zephyrian escort vessel like a hot knife through butter. The aliens' energy shields, designed to deflect coherent weapons fire, were useless against the focused industrial cutting tools that human miners use to harvest asteroids. The cargo hauler Family's Promise rammed directly through a Zephyrian destroyer, its reinforced hull crushing the alien ship's elegant curves into twisted metal. The humans had taken vessels designed for peaceful purposes and turned them into instruments of war through sheer determination and engineering ingenuity. But it was the transport ship Children's Guardian that delivered the most devastating blow. Dr. Vasquez had loaded it with mining charges designed to crack open asteroid cores. When it detonated next to the Zephyrian command ship, the explosion sent shockwaves through the entire enemy fleet. Commander Sithkar's image reappeared on Sarah's screen, but now his arrogant confidence had been replaced by something approaching panic. "This is impossible. Humans do not fight like this. You are a peaceful species." "You took our children," Sarah replied simply. "Did you really think we would just accept that?" The research vessel holding the captured children tried to flee, but Marcus Webb had anticipated the move. The Terra's vengeance intercepted it, using precise plasma cuts to disable its engines without breaching the hull sections where the children were being held. As the last Zephyrian resistance crumbled, Sarah watched alien crews abandoning their ships and escape pods. They had expected to face diplomatic protests and trade sanctions. Instead, they had encountered something they had never seen before: humans fighting with the protective fury of parents defending their young. "Captain," Dr. Vasquez reported, "I'm detecting life signs consistent with human children aboard the research vessel. They appear to be in good health." Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her, but she knew this was only the beginning. The Zephyrians had learned a painful lesson about human nature, but the real test would come when the rest of the galaxy learned what had happened here. The docking clamps of the captured Zephyrian research vessel sealed with a satisfying thunk against the hull of Terra's Vengeance. Sarah Martinez stood in the airlock, surrounded by her rescue team, each wearing full environmental suits and carrying medical supplies rather than weapons. The time for violence had passed. Now came the delicate task of retrieving traumatized children from an alien laboratory. Dr. Elena Vasquez led the medical team through the alien corridors, her scanner detecting human life signs in what appeared to be holding cells 3 decks below their entry point. The Zephyrian ship's interior was a maze of curved passages and chambers, designed for beings much different from humans. Everything was too warm, too humid, and filled with the strange chemical sense of an alien atmosphere. "The children are this way," Dr. Vasquez whispered, though there were no Zephyrians left on the ship to overhear. The crew had fled in escape pods when it became clear their vessel was being boarded. "I'm reading 27 human life signs, all showing normal vital functions." As they moved deeper into the ship, Marcus Webb's voice crackled through the communication system from the bridge. "Captain, we're receiving multiple incoming transmissions from across the galaxy. Word of our attack is spreading fast." Sarah's jaw tightened. She had known this moment would come, but she had hoped to have the children safely home before dealing with the galactic political fallout. "Patch them through to my suitcom, Marcus." The first transmission was from the Galactic Trade Union's Emergency Council. Ambassador Cathara, a tall crystalline being from the Altair system, appeared on Sarah's helmet display. Her voice carried the typical bureaucratic mixture of concern and disapproval that characterized most galactic diplomatic communications. "Captain Martinez, we are receiving reports of an unprovoked attack on a Zephyrian research expedition. The Union demands an immediate explanation for this act of aggression." Sarah didn't slow her pace toward the holding cells. "The Zephyrians kidnapped 27 human children, Ambassador. We're retrieving them. The proper procedure is to file a formal complaint with the Union's Justice Commission. Military action requires authorization from the Security Council." "The proper procedure didn't account for someone stealing our children," Sarah replied coldly. "We don't negotiate with kidnappers." The second transmission came from the Altaran Confederation, humanity's closest allies in the local sector. Admiral Zekthar, a tall reptilian being with silver scales, appeared on the display. Unlike the Union ambassador, his expression showed something approaching respect. "Captain Martinez, the Confederation Council is concerned about the precedent you've set today. However, we understand the provocation. How can we assist in containing the political damage?" Sarah appreciated the Altaran's pragmatic approach, but her focus remained on the mission. "We'll deal with politics after we have our children back, Admiral. Right now, I need you to ensure no other ships interfere with our rescue operation." They reached the holding area, and Dr. Vasquez immediately began scanning the alien locking mechanisms. The cells were designed for specimen containment rather than prisoner detention, but the result was the same. The children were trapped behind energy barriers they couldn't breach on their own. "I can hear them," Dr. Vasquez whispered, tears streaming down her face inside her helmet. Tommy's voice. "Maria's crying." Her hands worked frantically at the alien controls, using the technical data they had captured to reverse engineer the locking systems. The first cell deactivated with a soft hiss, and 8-year-old Tommy Vasquez stumbled out into his mother's arms. The little boy was frightened and confused, but physically unharmed. One by one, the other children emerged from their cells, 27 young humans who had been torn from their families and thrust into an incomprehensible nightmare. "Mommy?" whispered 6-year-old Maria Vasquez, clinging to her mother with desperate strength. "The snake people said they were going to make us smart. I told them we were already smart, but they didn't listen." Dr. Vasquez held her children close, but her scientific mind was already processing the implications of what Maria had said. "Captain, based on what the children are telling us, the Zephyrians were planning to conduct cognitive enhancement experiments. They believed human children had underdeveloped intelligence that could be artificially improved." Sarah felt a fresh wave of rage at the aliens' casual assumption that human children were somehow deficient and needed their improvement. The Zephyrians had completely misunderstood both human development and the parent-child bond that made such experimentation not just scientifically questionable, but morally reprehensible. As the medical team completed their evacuation of the children, Sarah received a priority transmission from Earth Command. Admiral Richardson appeared on her display, his face grim but proud. "Sarah, the entire Zephyrian High Command is demanding reparations for your attack. They're claiming it was an unprovoked act of piracy. What do you want me to tell them, Admiral?" Tell them that humanity has a very simple policy regarding our children. Anyone who threatens them will face consequences they can't imagine. The Zephyrians wanted to study human nature. Well, now they have some excellent data on what happens when humans are pushed too far. The children were safely aboard human ships within 2 hours, receiving medical attention and comfort from the adults who had traveled across 3 star systems to bring them home. But Sarah knew that the real battle was just beginning. The galactic community was in an uproar over humanity's use of military force to resolve what they saw as a diplomatic dispute. A third transmission arrived, this one from an unexpected source. High Counselor Vextai of the Ancient Etherian Collective appeared on Sarah's screen. The Etherians were among the oldest species in the galaxy, and their opinion carried enormous weight in galactic affairs. Captain Martinez, the ghostly figure said in a voice like wind through crystal, the collective has been observing the situation with great interest. We have seen many species rise and fall over the millennia, but we have never seen a response quite like yours. Sarah braced herself for another diplomatic lecture about proper procedures and proportional response. The Zephyrians made a fundamental error in their understanding of human psychology, Vextai continued. They studied your species' diplomatic protocols and trade behaviors, but they failed to understand the biological and emotional imperatives that drive human parents. Today they learned that there are forces more powerful than military technology or political alliances. The ancient being's image flickered slightly before continuing. The collective wishes to formally recognize humanity's right to protect its young by any means necessary. We will support your actions in the Galactic Council. Sarah felt a moment of surprise at the unexpected support, but her attention quickly returned to the children being cared for in the medical bay. The political ramifications of her actions would have to be dealt with eventually. But right now, 27 human children were safe, and that was all that mattered. The message to the galaxy had been sent. Humanity might prefer diplomacy and peaceful cooperation, but when it came to protecting their children, humans would stop at nothing. The Zephyrians had learned this lesson the hard way, and the rest of the galaxy was taking careful notes. 3 days after the rescue, the improvised human fleet arrived back at New Terra Colony to a scene that Captain Sarah Martinez had never expected to witness. The normally quiet agricultural settlement had been transformed into a fortress, bristling with defensive installations. Ships from a dozen human colonies had arrived to provide support, and the orbital space around the planet was filled with both human vessels and alien ships from species across the galaxy. As Terra's vengeance settled into its landing approach, Sarah could see crowds of colonists gathered in the main plaza. The 27 rescued children were finally coming home, but the galaxy had been fundamentally changed by their rescue. News of humanity's military response to the kidnapping had spread like wildfire through galactic communication networks, and every species was trying to understand what this meant for future relations with humans. Dr. Elena Vasquez sat in the medical bay with her children, Tommy and Maria, who were physically unharmed but still processing their traumatic experience. "Mommy," Tommy said quietly, "the snake people kept asking us questions about how humans think. They wanted to know why we play games and tell stories and make art." "What did you tell them?" Dr. Vasquez asked gently. "I told them we do those things because they're fun and because they help us understand the world. But they didn't understand. They kept saying we were inefficient and needed to be improved." Sarah listened to the conversation from the medical bay's entrance, feeling a fresh surge of anger at the Zephyrians' fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. They had seen children at play and assumed it was a sign of cognitive deficiency rather than the natural development process that made humans so adaptable and creative. Marcus Webb joined Sarah in the corridor, carrying a datapad filled with intelligence reports. "Captain, we've got some interesting developments. The Zephyrian High Command has issued what amounts to an apology for the kidnapping, but they're claiming it was a rogue research unit acting without authorization." "Do you believe that?" "Not for a second. But the more important news is that we're getting reports from human colonies across the galaxy. Apparently, several other species have been conducting research on humans without proper consent. The Nexari have been secretly observing human emotional responses. The Kelvins have been collecting human genetic samples, and the Thurlan Empire has been studying our social structures." Sarah felt her blood run cold. The Zephyrian kidnapping hadn't been an isolated incident. It had been part of a larger pattern of alien species treating humans as interesting specimens rather than equals. The galaxy's scientific community had apparently decided that humanity was a fascinating subject for study, regardless of human consent or dignity. How are the other colonies responding? That's where it gets interesting. The colonies are organizing. Captain Rodriguez from New Lisbon has called for a general assembly of all human settlements. Captain Singh from the Kepler outpost is mobilizing her defense forces. Even the normally peaceful agricultural colonies are talking about arming their ships. A communication request came through from Admiral Richardson on Earth. When Sarah accepted the transmission, she saw that the Admiral was not alone. Behind him stood representatives from the major human colonies, the Earth Defense Council, and several politicians she didn't recognize. "Sarah, your actions at Xerion have had consequences far beyond what any of us anticipated," Richardson began. "The Galactic Trade Union is demanding that humanity submit to formal oversight of all future military actions. They want to establish monitoring stations in human space to ensure we don't engage in any more unprovoked aggression." "And our response?" "The human colonies are unanimous," replied Governor Chen from Alpha Centauri. "We're rejecting any form of external oversight. If the galactic community wanted to prevent military actions by humans, they should have prevented the kidnapping of our children in the first place." Sarah nodded grimly. The unity among human settlements was unprecedented. For the first time since humanity had joined the galactic community, all human colonies were speaking with one voice on a matter of mutual defense. Dr. Vasquez joined the conversation from the medical bay. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the data we recovered from the Zephyrian research vessel. What they were planning to do to our children was far worse than we initially thought. They weren't just studying human cognitive development, they were planning to conduct invasive neural modifications to enhance human intelligence according to their standards." The implications hung heavy in the air. The Zephyrians hadn't just kidnapped human children. They had planned to fundamentally alter their minds and personalities based on alien concepts of improvement. The thought of what could have happened to Tommy, Maria, and the other children made Sarah's hands clench into fists. "There's something else," Dr. Vasquez continued. "The research logs indicate that this wasn't the first time they've conducted these experiments. There are references to previous test subjects from other species. The galactic community has been tolerating this kind of research for decades." Admiral Richardson's expression darkened. "Are you telling me that the galaxy's scientific establishment has been conducting unauthorized experiments on sentient beings, and the authorities have been looking the other way?" "That's exactly what I'm saying. The Zephyrians, the Nexari, the Kelvons, they're all part of a loose confederation of species that see younger galactic civilizations as subjects for study rather than equals for cooperation." Sarah felt the pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. Humanity's rapid expansion into space, their innovative technology, and their unique social structures had made them particularly interesting to these research-focused species. The kidnapping of the children hadn't been an isolated criminal act. It had been part of a systematic program of studying and potentially modifying human development. "Admiral, request permission to address the Galactic Council directly," Sarah said. "Sarah, you're not a diplomat. This situation requires careful handling. With respect, sir, diplomats didn't rescue our children. Parents did. The galaxy needs to understand that humanity won't tolerate being treated as a research subject. If they want to study us, they can ask permission. If they want to understand human nature, they can observe us being good neighbors. But if they try to take our children again, they'll discover that our response to the Zephyrians was restrained compared to what we're capable of." The transmission ended with Admiral Richardson promising to arrange a formal hearing before the Galactic Council. As Sarah looked out at the bustling activity around New Terra Colony, she realized that humanity had reached a turning point in its relationship with the galaxy. The rescue of 27 children had demonstrated that humans would fight for their young with a ferocity that no alien species had anticipated. But more than that, it had shown the galaxy that humanity wouldn't be passive subjects in someone else's research program. If other species wanted to understand human nature, they were about to get a comprehensive education in what happened when humans decided to defend their values and their families against anyone who threatened them. The children were home safe, but the real test of humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council had never hosted a session quite like this one. Captain Sarah Martinez stood at the central podium, surrounded by representatives from hundreds of species spanning the known galaxy. The circular amphitheater was filled with beings of every conceivable shape and form, but all eyes were focused on the human who had single-handedly disrupted decades of established galactic protocols. Ambassador Cathera of the Trade Union rose from her crystalline perch, her voice carrying the formal authority of galactic bureaucracy. Captain Martinez, you stand before this assembly to account for the unprovoked military assault on Zephyrian research vessels. Your actions have violated 17 separate articles of the Galactic Peace Accords. Sarah looked around the vast chamber, taking in the faces of beings who had apparently spent years treating humanity as an interesting subject for study, rather than equal partners in galactic civilization. Honorable delegates, I'm not here to apologize for protecting human children. I'm here to inform you that the rules of engagement have changed. A ripple of unease went through the assembly. The Zephyrian delegate, Fleet Commander Sithkar, rose from his position in the lower tier. His serpentine form still bore visible signs of the defeat he had suffered at human hands, and his voice carried a mixture of anger and confusion. The humans claim they acted in defense of their young, he hissed through the translation system, but their response was completely disproportionate to the situation. We were conducting legitimate scientific research on specimens that showed unusual cognitive development patterns. Sarah felt her jaw clench at the casual dismissal of 27 children as specimens, but she kept her voice steady and professional. Commander Sithkar, would you clarify for this assembly what you mean by legitimate scientific research? The human juveniles displayed problem-solving capabilities and social behaviors that deviated from standard developmental models. Our research was designed to identify these abnormalities and correct them through neural enhancement procedures. The silence that followed was deafening. Even among species that had little understanding of human family structures, the casual discussion of forcibly modifying children's minds was clearly disturbing to many delegates. High Counselor Vextai of the Etherian Collective materialized in his speaking position, his ghostly form shimmering with ancient authority. Commander Sithkar, did you obtain consent from the subject's guardians before beginning this research? Consent was unnecessary. The specimens were collected from a primitive colonial settlement for the betterment of their species. Our modifications would have improved their cognitive efficiency and eliminated wasteful behaviors like play and artistic expression. Sarah stepped forward, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. Delegates of the Galactic Council, you've just heard a military commander describe the kidnapping and planned mental modification of 27 human children as legitimate scientific research. He speaks of eliminating play and artistic expression, as if these were diseases to be cured rather than essential parts of human development. She activated her personal display system, showing images of the children playing in New Terra Colony's schoolyard before their capture, and then images of them in the Zephyrian holding cells. These are not specimens or research subjects. These are children named Tommy and Maria and Jessica and Marcus and 23 others. They have parents who love them, friends who miss them, and futures that were nearly stolen by beings who saw them as inferior creatures in need of improvement. The Nexari delegate, a tall insectoid being with multifaceted eyes, spoke from her position in the middle tier. Captain Martinez, your emotional response is understandable but impractical. The advancement of galactic science requires the study of developing species. Surely you can appreciate the knowledge that could be gained from understanding human cognitive development. Would you volunteer your own children for such research? Sarah asked bluntly. The Nexari do not form emotional attachments to offspring in the same manner as humans. Our young are raised collectively for the benefit of the hive. And that's exactly the problem, Sarah replied, her voice growing harder. You've made assumptions about how all species should develop based on your own social structures. You've decided that human family bonds are inefficient, that human play is wasteful, and that human creativity needs to be corrected. You've studied us like laboratory specimens without ever trying to understand what makes us human. Dr. Elena Vasquez's voice came through the communication system from New Terra Colony, where she was monitoring the proceedings while caring for the rescued children. Honorable delegates, I've analyzed the research protocols that the Zephyrians plan to use on our children. They would have permanently altered brain structures responsible for emotional bonding, creative thinking, and social cooperation. They would have turned our children into efficient biological machines incapable of love, art, or friendship. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. Even species that had little concept of individual emotional bonds understood the implications of forcibly modifying the fundamental nature of sentient beings. Ambassador Korath of the Altaran Confederation stood to address the assembly. The Confederation has reviewed the evidence presented by Captain Martinez and Dr. Vasquez. We find that humanity's response was not only justified but restrained. The protection of offspring is a fundamental right of all sentient species. The Thurlian Empire agrees, announced Emperor Valak from his elevated position. We have young of our own, and we would respond similarly to any threat against them. Sarah saw the tide of opinion beginning to turn in the assembly, but she knew that winning this single debate wasn't enough. The galaxy needed to understand that humanity wouldn't tolerate being treated as research subjects by any species, regardless of their scientific curiosity or technological superiority. Honorable delegates, she said, I want to be absolutely clear about humanity's position going forward. We welcome scientific cooperation based on mutual respect and informed consent. We're happy to share our knowledge and learn from other species, but we will not tolerate unauthorized research on human beings. And we will not allow our children to be treated as specimens for alien experiments. She paused, letting her words sink in before delivering her final statement. The galaxy has spent years studying human nature from a distance, making assumptions about our weaknesses and limitations. Today, you've seen what happens when someone threatens our children. Tomorrow, you'll see what happens when humanity decides to actively defend our values and our people throughout the galaxy. The threat was clear but not aggressive. Humanity was no longer content to be passive subjects in someone else's research program. They were ready to become active participants in shaping galactic civilization, with all the benefits and challenges that entailed. Fleet Commander Sithkar spoke one final time, his voice carrying a note of something that might have been respect. The humans are more dangerous than we calculated. Their willingness to use extreme force to protect their young was not anticipated in our risk assessments. Sarah looked directly at the Zephyrian commander as she replied, Commander, you made the mistake of thinking that because humans prefer peace, we're incapable of war. You confused our mercy with weakness, our diplomacy with submission. That was your error, not our aggression. 6 months after the rescue at Zirian Belt, Captain Sarah Martinez stood in the observation deck of the newly constructed Guardian Station, humanity's first military installation dedicated to protecting colonial settlements. The space around New Terra Colony bustled with activity as ships from across human space came and went, part of an expanding network of mutual defense agreements that had fundamentally changed humanity's role in galactic politics. Through the reinforced windows, she could see the playground where this all began, now filled with children whose laughter echoed through the settlement's corridors. Tommy and Maria Vasquez were among them, playing with friends and showing no lasting trauma from their experience beyond a healthy skepticism of strangers. The resilience of human children had impressed even the galaxy's most advanced psychologists. Dr. Elena Vasquez joined Sarah at the observation window, carrying a datapad filled with reports from human colonies across the galaxy. The Galactic Research Ethics Commission has formally adopted the New Terra protocols for all research involving sentient beings, she announced with satisfaction. No scientific research can be conducted on any individual without informed consent from both the subject and their guardians or government representatives. Sarah nodded, pleased that some good had come from the traumatic experience. What about the Zephyrians? Fleet Commander Sithkar has become something of an advocate for ethical research practices among his own people. Apparently, the defeat at Zirian shattered their assumptions about military superiority so completely that they've begun questioning their other assumptions as well. Their latest communication referred to the incident as educational regarding human protective instincts. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah that the beings who had wanted to study human nature had ended up learning more about humanity through conflict than they ever could have through laboratory experiments. The Zephyrians' painful lesson in human determination had rippled throughout the galactic scientific community, ending decades of unauthorized research on developing species. Marcus Webb's voice came through the communication system from the station's command center. Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Etherian Collective. High Counselor Vexatai wants to speak with you personally. Sarah made her way to the communication center, where the ancient being's ghostly image materialized in the holographic projector. Vextai's expression was as unreadable as always, but there was something different in his demeanor that suggested important news. "Captain Martinez," the Etherian said, "the collective has been observing the changes in galactic civilization since the Xerion incident. We wish to inform you that humanity has been formally recognized as a guardian species under ancient galactic protocols that have not been invoked for over 3,000 years." Sarah felt a moment of confusion. "What exactly does that designation mean, Counselor?" "A guardian species is one that has demonstrated the willingness and capability to protect other developing civilizations from exploitation or abuse. It is a responsibility that comes with significant authority within galactic governance structures." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. Humanity had gone from being subjects of scientific study to being recognized as protectors of other species in the span of 6 months. The rescue of 27 children had elevated them to a position of galactic responsibility that few species ever achieved. "There are currently only 3 other guardian species in the galaxy," Vextai continued. "The Etherians, the Alteran Confederation, and the ancient builders who vanished millennia ago but left behind automated protection systems. Humanity will now have the authority to intervene in situations where developing species are being threatened or exploited." Dr. Vasquez leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overriding her amazement. "Counselor, what triggered humanity's recognition as a guardian species? Surely other species have protected their young with similar determination." "Dr. Vasquez, it was not merely the protection of your offspring that earned this recognition. It was the manner in which you did so, and the principles you demonstrated afterward. When faced with the kidnapping of your children, humanity could have simply negotiated for their return or accepted compensation. Instead, you chose to risk everything to rescue them personally." The ancient being's image flickered slightly as he continued. "But more importantly, when you addressed the Galactic Council, you did not seek revenge against the Zephyrians or demand dominance over other species. You simply established that unauthorized research on sentient beings would not be tolerated. You protected not just your own children, but the children of every species that might face similar threats in the future." Sarah felt the weight of galactic responsibility settling on her shoulders. Humanity had fought to protect their own children, but in doing so, they had apparently demonstrated the values and capabilities necessary to protect others as well. "What does this mean for human colonies and settlements?" she asked. "Humanity now has the authority to establish protection protocols for any developing species in the galaxy. You can intervene in situations involving exploitation, unauthorized research, or threats to civilian populations. You also have access to Guardian Council resources and ancient defensive technologies that have been held in trust for species worthy of this responsibility." As the transmission ended, Sarah looked out at the children playing in New Terra Colony's schoolyard. Tommy Vasquez was showing a group of younger children how to build something complex with construction blocks, while Maria was organizing a game that seemed to involve elaborate storytelling and role-playing. They were developing their problem-solving abilities and social skills through play, exactly the behaviors that the Zephyrians had wanted to eliminate through neural modification. Dr. Vasquez joined her at the window. "It's strange to think that trying to save our own children ended up making us responsible for protecting everyone else's children too." "Maybe it's not so strange," Sarah replied thoughtfully. "The qualities that make someone willing to fight for their own family are the same qualities that make them willing to protect others. The galaxy just took a while to recognize that." News of humanity's designation as a guardian species spread quickly through human settlements. On New Terra Colony, the reaction was a mixture of pride and trepidation. Parents who had been fighting to protect their own children suddenly found themselves entrusted with protecting the young of hundreds of other species. But as Sarah watched Tommy and Maria playing with their friends, she realized that humanity was well suited for this responsibility. Humans had always been natural protectors, teachers, and nurturers. They had simply needed the galaxy's other species to stop seeing them as subjects for study and start recognizing them as partners in building a better galactic civilization. The Zephyrian Fleet Commander, Sithkar's final transmission to New Terra Colony had been brief but telling. "We came to study human children and learned instead about human parents. This was educational. The galaxy had indeed learned about human nature, but not through laboratory experiments or unauthorized research. They had learned by witnessing what happened when humans were pushed to defend their most precious treasures, their children. And in that moment of crisis, humanity had revealed not weakness or primitiveness, but a strength of spirit that earned them a place among the galaxy's most trusted protectors. The children were safe, the galaxy was safer, and humanity had found its true calling among the stars, not as subjects to be studied, but as guardians to be respected.